Right, good evening. We will now go ahead and start our open session, starting with item 3, general matters. This is the open session board meeting for the Franklin McKinley School District. We'll start with item 3.01, land acknowledgement statement, which I will read now. We acknowledge that the Franklin McKinley School District and our schools are located in the Mwekma Ohlone Nation, the sovereign nation and original people of the skies, land, and waters where we learn and work. The Mwekma Ohlone people are the stewards of these lands and of the teaching and learning that comes from and responds to the needs of the land and people who share it. May our daily lives and work, learning, teaching, and community engagement support the evolving vision of the Mwekma Ohlone for their community and these lands. Item 3.02 is the flag salute, which we will do now. Board Member Rosado, can you lead us in the flag salute, please? Thank you.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now move to item 3.03, approve, disapprove additions to the agenda. Hearing none, we will move to item 3.04, approve, disapprove order of the agenda. Hearing none, we will move to item 3.05, report of action taken in closed session. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, thank you. The board, 3 votes in favor, none opposed, approves the closed session minutes. The board also approved the appointment of Patricia Hernandez as the Enrollment Center Supervisor. There are no other actions to report.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. We will now move to item 4, oral communications. Members of the public may address the board on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board or agenda items. Members of the public may also address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. No action can be taken on any agenda items at this time. Questions may be referred to the administration or put on a future agenda. We'll go to item 4.01, oral communications. Do we have any oral communications at this time?
We do. We have 3 members of the public that would like to address the board. We will start with Scott Shillemson.
I believe the board will be able to hear from.
Can you hear me okay? Great. Good evening, everyone. First off, I just want to note that sorry to see that our board member Rosado will be resigning. It's been my pleasure to work with.
If you can hear us, hold on a minute so we can make sure we hear you fully.
Okay. Can you hear me?
The connection's a little poor, so give us a minute. I think Sammer's trying to help us.
Scott?
Can you try again, Scott?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
So poor connection.
You, I can log off and I can try logging back in.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
It's still not muted. Are you muted?
Me? I'm
Try it, Scott.
Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Felt like I was in a Verizon commercial for a second. All right. So first of all, I just wanted to thank Board Member Rosado for her years of service in our school district. I was sorry to read that that term will be coming to an early end, but thank you for all of your dedication to our district. I wanted to speak more I wanted to speak on item 8.06, and that is the district's expulsion plan and agreement with the county. And I just can't, there's no way I can let this go by without noting the serious issues we've been having in our district for a number of years now that do not seem to have resulted in any expulsions. I know I've talked with Superintendent Cruz many times about this issue, and we've had some robust disagreements on the matter, and I certainly understand different perspectives on it. But I have to say that, in my opinion, there are times when the district does need to exercise our legal right to expel students when they are putting themselves and others in danger, and that I don't see the district doing that much the last several years. And I'd like to remind everybody that the CDE has a webpage that has expulsion matrix. And there's a must recommend expulsion, mandatory, but then there's the shall recommend unless particular circumstances render inappropriate. And it's that middle category that I do not see our district ever exercising our legal right under. And I do think it's very important that the administration do what is necessary to keep students and staff safe in our district. And at times that may mean expelling students, even under this middle section of expulsions, the shall recommend unless particular circumstances render inappropriate. So I just wanted to use this occasion to highlight that I feel our district could do more in this department. And I don't think expulsion should ever be taken lightly. Please don't think I'm saying otherwise. It's an extremely serious step, but we also do need to make sure that our students and our staff are safe. And at times, I think this step does need to be taken perhaps a little more frequently than has happened in our district the last several years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Go to the next person, Macario Ortiz.
You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Macario Ortiz, would you like to make a public comment? If so, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, got it. Technical difficulties where I live.
No problem, we can hear you now.
Well, I just hope that with the issue of expulsions, it doesn't increment the problem of into the dropout or the push-out problem, because a lot of times expulsions does lead to expulsions. Well, the expulsion problem might lead to a dropout or a push-out problem, because it might be something that that a district might take into consideration if they take their percentages of students that are, that are dropping out of, that are prone to drop out of the junior at the junior high school level. Because at the high school level, it does have, I taught at the high school level for 36 years, and a lot of times it seems that the students have issues at the junior high school level. It follows them to the high school. And that leads a lot of times to either to a push out or to a dropout. Ironically, not too many districts think about the issue of push-outs. They only make reference to dropouts, but not push-outs. But I think that this is something that perhaps the Franklin McKinney School District can perhaps start to dialogue on this particular issue. Did I make any sense?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now go to Julie Lata. Julie, you should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like to make your public comment now. Julie Lata? It's *6 to unmute. So Julie Lata, if you'd like to press *6 to unmute, the board can hear your, is able to unhear, will be able to accept your public comment at this time.
Is it *6 or *9? Oh, *9 is to raise a hand.
She's still showing up as a participant. She still is a participant.
Yeah. There's two numbers. She's from Applied Materials.
Right. Perhaps it's not on a specific agenda item, is it?
No. Julie, if you can unmute yourself, *6. Let me see. I can ask. It's on Zoom. It's just she needs to unmute herself.
Okay.
Okay. We can
perhaps we can come back if she's able to get through tests. We will now go to item 5, recognitions. Item 5.01, the Global Learners School recognition.
So this is a time of year that it's always great to be able to celebrate and recognize the wonderful work of our students. And well, we normally would have them all here, and it would be a lively boardroom with parents and students and staff here celebrating their wonderful work and dedication. Because of this, we've been doing it virtually, and we've been able to get their pictures. And HR has been putting these presentations together now. I think they're getting really, really sophisticated, and they've added some music to it. So it's just another way to be able to recognize our students. So we're going to go ahead and start the presentation of announcing the global learners, and you'll be able to see their picture and what school they're coming from. So we're going to start with from Bridges Academy. We have Lam Tran. From College Connection Academy, we have Alina Pham. From Captain Jason Dahl, we have Evelyn Oyote Osegura. There you go. From Hellier, Virgilio Joseph Sandida, Duque II. From Kennedy, Mari Ross. From Laron College Preparatory, Joanna Valdez. From Los Árboles, Ha Nguyen. From McKinley, Anthony Nguyen. From Meadows, Kaylee Nguyen. From Ramblewood, Mina Sanchez. From Santee, Eliana Nunez. From Shirakawa, Adam Cortez. From Stonegate, Luciana Rodriguez. From Silverdale, Ambriel Luis Flock. And from Windmill Springs, Giselle Lara. Congratulations to all our students. Let's give them a big round of applause. And now up next, our Spirit Award recipients. And these are for our staff. Obviously, we could give these out to all our staff, but our tradition is to identify staff members that exemplify the core values of student focus, partnership, integrity, respect, innovation, and teamwork. And these are staff members that have been nominated by their colleagues and gone through a selection process. So we're happy to recognize their wonderful work and their support to our students and our families. So under the category of student focus, we have William Holt from Franklin. Under the core value of partnership, we have Anthony Alvarado from Franklin. Under the core value of integrity, Maria Hijonosa, College Connection Academy. In the category of respect, we have Edgar Quiroz Medrano from Dahl. Under the core value of innovation, we have Helen McGinnis from Los Árboles. And in the core value of teamwork, we have Tina Aberg from Santee. Again, let's give our Spirit Award winners and our Global Learners another big round of applause.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Cruz, and congratulations to our students and our employees on your awards. We are very grateful to have you be a part of this district. And we celebrate and honor the work you're doing, both as students and staff in our district. So thank you so much again for being part of our district, and congratulations. We will now go to item 6, the public hearing. Item 6.01, the public hearing for the adoption of the Benchmark Adelante curriculum for Spanish dual immersion program. I believe this is an opportunity to hear public.
Yes, not just a public.
So we'll go ahead and open for the public hearing at this time. Do we have any public comments on this item? Hearing none, the public hearing for this item will be closed. And we'll now go to item 6.02, the notice of public hearing for the 2021 to 2022 proposed budget and LCAP. So this is just a hearing. Yeah, this is the notification that the district budget will be heard on June 8th, 2021. For anyone to take note of that for our coming board meeting. We will now go to item 7, information, discussion, and or action items. Item 7.01, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, board committee update.
Yes, thank you. I'll introduce the item, and we have a presentation. I want to recognize a number of our committee members that have joined us through Zoom. We have principal from Dahl, Michelle Collingtine. We have principal from Kennedy, Mariana Alvarez. We also have our student voice. Mia has joined us as well. She's been serving as our student voice on our committee. We also have Imelda Murillo, teacher SNT, that is also a member of our committee. So we wanted to be able to bring to the board an update in regards to the work that we've done so far and the work that is still we'll be moving forward with. So if we can go to the next slide. So again, the board passed the resolution on January 28th, calling for the formation of this board committee. And then on the 27th of October, we went ahead and appointed the members of the committee. And then next slide. Yeah, 2020, yes. And so since the board appointed the committee members, we've had a number of meetings, as you can see here. Our first one was on December 18th, and our last one was just recently on the 19th. We've been meeting regularly in developing the committee's charter and creating, drafting a definition of equity for Franklin McKinley, and also our priorities. Next slide. So at this point, what I'm gonna have, we have committee members that offered a quote or a statement, but I'm gonna, since they are here with us, I'm going to go ahead and ask them to unmute themselves, and if they wanna share something, and then I will pass it over to our board president to continue with the presentation. We'll start with Ms. Alvarez.
Do you want to go to the slide with mine on it, or just speak?
There you
go. Were we going to go to the slide with my little thing on it, or should I just say something? All right, so what I wrote earlier was, as I near the end of my 4th year as a principal in Franklin McKinley School District, being a part of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging Committee has felt like a giant step in the right direction for our district. During every meeting, there is a richness in the conversation as we discuss our students, families, and communities. There's been a high level of intentionality as we create a common definition and principles for equity, specific to the FMSD community. There is no doubt that the work we're doing will have a direct impact on our ability to provide equitable opportunities and outcomes for our students. I look forward to continuing the work as we evaluate and build systems and structures that provide access and opportunity for all students. So it has truly been an honor to be a part of these conversations and to be surrounded with so many people who the level of intentionality, I can't stress that enough in the language that we're using as we create our definitions, and really thinking about perspectives and all perspectives, ones we may agree with or disagree with, and just our focus, of our 4 words being diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It feels really, I can't, also once again, just a step in the right direction for our district and doing right by our kids, our community, and the families that we're impacting every day.
Okay, did you want me to speak now or? do you want me to say talk now? Okay, sorry. I'm Imelda Murillo. I'm a teacher at Santee, and what I wrote was, as a teacher of color on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging Committee, I have made an effort to voice the impact of the decisions of our committee on the classroom and how it could possibly affect our teaching and learning environment. As stated in the resolution, it is about making our students as well as their staff visible and embraced within our district. With this in mind, the committee has tried to incorporate the different stakeholders and how we define the real life implications of our priorities. Our next steps will be to receive feedback and also take steps to communicate the vision of the committee. So that's where we're at. We've come up with a rough draft of a lot of the definition and our mission, and now hopefully we could go ahead and continue receiving some feedback and how we would be able to communicate this so that it becomes part of our district and not just, tucked away somewhere, but that we live it in the classroom with our community and stakeholders.
Hi, my name is Michelle Quillentang, and I'm the principal at Dahl. And this is my first year being principal in the Franklin McKinley School District. And I feel that my comments very much echo what Mariana wrote, and that it has been an honor to serve on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. As mentioned before, the committee is made up of different stakeholders, so we really get to have the diverse perspectives, and we have some really great conversations that we engage in. And I wanted to add, as part of my comment, was that I feel like as we are preparing to return to bring students back in person, the work that we're doing in the committee is responsive to the needs of our students and our families. And it's going to help with our communities being empowered to create more equitable learning opportunities and outcomes for our students. And as both a principal in the district and as a parent, I feel that that is a great thing.
Hi, my name is Mia Raquel Augustine. I go to Bridges Academy and I'm in 7th grade. And I didn't get to write down a slide, but I would just like to say I'm very thankful to be in this committee because I just want to show our students and families that we can change for the better and how we can involve in a way to make it easier for our district and everyone else.
leverage the diversity of our school community. So the committee engaged in many sessions of going back and forth, trying to define what equity and inclusion look like district in the current draft and current iteration of that definition. And we hope to be able to, again, continue to vet this definition as it evolves with feedback from our stakeholders. On the right, we have the visual of priorities that we see in equity for our district. So as we think about how we define success in our district, that's part of what we're going to do is evaluate these priorities to see how we're making progress. And those priority areas are behavior response, belonging and connection, grading practices, professional development, academic and social emotional needs of all, build structures and systems and structures for access and opportunity. So we see several areas of priorities within each of these categories, but these are the focus areas for the priorities that we see we would like to work on moving forward. Next slide, please. So to go into a little bit more detail in terms of some of the work that the committee has done when thinking about each of these areas, these are within those priority areas. What does this mean when we talk about these areas and these priorities? For systems and supports, we're looking at our multi-tiered systems of support for students, looking at revising special education systems as needed to make sure, again, we're looking at the structural systems level changes. In the area of behavior response, building structures and systems for success, proactive, pro-social, preventative, and assets-based thinking when it comes to behavior, and building and teaching school-wide expectations around behavior. I know from the parent meeting that we had earlier, that was also reiterated why parents are concerned. And I think this is what Mariana was also speaking to earlier is, coming back from this pandemic, how are we going to make sure that, we teach those expectations, but also are fostering this environment that where those expectations are cultivated as well. We have in the area of belonging and connection, so access and use student voice, intentionally including parents and families, creating multilingual resources, and special education, inclusion, and support. So again, fostering that belonging and connection. Then we have grading practices. So the idea behind that is we want to build consistency across our school sites, redefine what grading means, right? What does it mean when we give students letter grades or proficiency levels? Focusing on assets rather than deficits, allowing for revision and completion, and really going through a mindset shifts for the adults that are working on these grading practices. In the area of professional development, we have the implicit bias work, which will help us lead to mindset change, culturally responsive teaching and learning, and social emotional learning, as well as trauma-informed teaching as well. We have academic and social emotional needs was the other priority area. We want to focus on building anti-racist communities, using data to drive our decisions, using formative assessments and research-based curricula to, again, lead our work that we're doing in these priority areas. So, this has been quite the process to make sure that we, have tried to capture as much of this as we can. And the next steps are, as many committee members have mentioned, is gathering feedback on this draft that we've put together and sharing what the vision for this committee is and for the work. And then also figuring out what those goals are so that we can come back and make sure that we're making progress and revisiting to hold ourselves accountable and present recommendations to the board as well. I did want to share one other committee voice. This is from Vanessa, who's a parent in our district as well. And I'll go ahead and read that slide now. She wrote, having a committee like the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee is crucial in the ongoing conversation of educational equity. As a parent at FMSD since 2012, one key thing I hope this committee achieves is to provide our students with an opportunity to have a high quality of education, regardless of their social economical background. And then there's also a quote, equality is leaving the door open for anyone who has the means to approach it Equity is ensuring there's a pathway to that door for those who need it. Very well said. Thank you, Vanessa, for sharing that comment and perspective as a parent on our committee as well. So that is a snapshot of the work that has been going on in the committee, and I hope we can continue to engage in this cycle of gathering feedback and doing the work for the committee. Board members, any questions or comments?
Implementation will take place.
Thank you, Board Member Sanchez. Any other comments from the board on this item?
Yeah, I just want us to make sure that we make public the presentation because it wasn't shared. I don't think it's not in the board packet. So if we could make that public, that would be great.
Yes, thank you for catching that, Board Member Rodriguez. I will make sure that it gets uploaded before the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments or questions? Otherwise,
yeah. So just as a recap, this is we will make the rounds with our stakeholders, various meetings with parents, community members, and staff, and get feedback on the draft of the priorities, the draft of the definition, and then once it goes back to the committee. Then we hope to bring to the board in the future for approval what we would consider the Franklin-McKinley definition of equity and the priorities, and then set a calendar of what will be worked on by the committee, and then bring those items back to the board as well.
Once again, thank you to our committee members who joined us via Zoom this evening as well and submitted comments to share in terms of the work that's being done on the committee. We appreciate your dedication and engaging in this demanding and rigorous process, but also to ensure we have the best possible outcomes for our students and community. So with that, we will now go on to item 7.02, the resignation of governing board member Carrie Rosado and approval of the adoption method and timeline for filing the vacancy on the Franklin-McKinley School District Governing Board and the board appointment application packet. So it's with a very heavy heart, I should say. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to work, share the dais with Carrie. And Carrie, I'll turn it over to you. But thank you once again for your service, and you will certainly be missed in our district.
Thank you for those kind words. Definitely was a pleasure serving on the board since 2018. It's sad I won't be able to finish my first term, but that's okay. My family and I are moving to Southern California, in case you're wondering why I'm resigning. But definitely it was a pleasure. Many lessons learned about how public education functions and all the challenges that public school districts face, especially with what happened with the pandemic, which was something totally unanticipated. But definitely really admire the hard work that the entire district has put in. From the board members to all the staff, to the cabinet, the superintendent, and everyone else, teachers and students as well. And wishing everybody the best at FMSD, and looking forward to seeing everything that the D&I committee is committing to.
Thank you, Carrie. Superintendent Cruz, you want to walk us through some of the process and items?
In this particular situation, the board has two options. The one option is to call for a special board meeting, a special election to fill the vacancy for the rest of the term. The second option is that the board engage in a process of appointing a replacement to serve the duration of the rest of the term. The board, if it chooses to fill the vacancy through a special election, would have to pay for the cost of the special election. If the board chooses, and Ed Code allows for the board to fill the vacancy through an appointment process, and the board has done this before in recent years. In that process, the board has the latitude of selecting a process for appointment, one which could involve committee members vetting candidates that then finalists are submitted to the board. This is the option that the board elected to use the last time it had a vacancy to be filled. The board also could just have the candidates be vetted by the board and ultimately decided by the board without a committee. So those are the options that the board has before them at this time. The only requirement is that the board has to decide on the method of filling the vacancy and filling it within 60 days now of the announcement of the resignation. The timeline, it is on the board packet there in regards to the process and the timeline that we have to, the board has to engage in to meet the Ed Code requirements. And so it is up to the board to decide on the method of how to fill the position.
Any other questions or comments from the board in terms of the pathway or outcome?
To give you a perspective, I'm not sure if Jason, you remember what we paid for the bond, and that was during a regular election in which, the way it works is that the more things that are on the ballot, then the cost of the election is shared between all the entities that have it. And so the last time we had an election, when we had we had a parcel and we had the regular board appointment election, was in a presidential election. So the cost would be a lot less than in this case on a off-year presidential election. So I'm not sure if you remember, Jason, what that number might be. I don't.
Okay, don't know what the cost would be for this election, but the estimated cost for the election for the bond was 160.
So it would be more than 163,000 because that was during a regular election. I believe that it's too late. I think that we would be looking at our own special election. If we tied it in with another one, it would still be more than 163,000 because again, that one was with a lot of other items. And so we would be bearing a larger portion of the election than the normal.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Okay, so I think at any cost, the special election is not something that our district can afford at this time. So I would support doing what we've done traditionally and using the appointment process. And I did look at the timeline and it's pretty aggressive, but thanks to Carrie, she gave us an opportunity to make the reappointment in her place in a timely manner and before the next school year starts. And I think it's very important that we have representation, full representation of our district before school starts, so we can make decisions that are needed for our district, for our students, with the possibility of in-person learning even being expanded. So I think, and then plus we also need the first seat filled because of the Communication Hills project as well. So I think it's I think it's it's a pretty good description, accurate, and I would support an appointment process, because I know that our board is very capable of reappointing a new board member to replace Carrie, who we're going to miss very much, which I'll add more comments later.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez.
I can't vote. I have to abstain, right?
Thank you for clarifying.
You can make a final comment.
Yeah.
Yes, in order for the district to be in compliance with that code, it is the board has to give us direction one way or another.
So I think it's really important that one, we do have, I agree with Board Member Rodriguez's sentiments. It's important that we fill this seat, particularly before the next school year, and we need to follow the Ed Code guidelines. I do not want to see us throw away money that really could be going to support our students and our classroom, our spaces in a special election. I think, if we can, the seat will be to the remainder of the term, which would be in 2022, which is not that far off. And then at that point, it'll be the voters' decision on who to select for the next term. But I think it's incumbent upon us to make the decision now to follow the proposed timeline. And, I also think that it's important for us to engage a community advisory committee. And that way, to the extent possible, we are also gathering input from our stakeholders that are also outlined on this agenda item. So those are my thoughts on the appointment process.
May I tag on to that? I don't think you meant throwing away our money, because giving the opportunity for our voters to have a choice is really ideal way. Unfortunately, the appointment process in this situation is probably the better way to go fiscally and timeliness. So I know what you meant. I just want to make sure that.
Thank you for clarifying. Yes,
yeah, I want to make sure the
not
public.
My intent
Exactly.
And words matter.
Ideally, our voters are the best decision, but I know that our voters in our school district gave us a lot of confidence in making the right choices. So with that said, I would like to move that we move forward with the appointment process as outlined with the timeline, and also to also accept the appointment application packet as well.
If I could, Board Member Rodriguez, and would that include also with the advisory committee?
As an amendment, because it's not on here. Is it on here?
Yes.
Oh, everything that's listed on the on the proposal include, yes.
Okay.
That would include the advisory committee as well as the questions outlined on
exactly.
The application process.
As presented.
And I'll go ahead and second that motion. Is there any additional discussion on that process as outlined?
Yeah. So if you look at the timeline, what this would do if the board approves this, is that on Friday, we would make the application available and widely distributed through our community. I've already engaged Valer so that they could help us to make sure that any member of our community that is eligible knows about it and can apply. And so that would start that process. And then when the deadline for the application, and then we would have the advisory committee review all the candidates, interview them, and then make a final recommendation by the board based on the number of candidates, how many the board would feel comfortable bringing forward. Last time we had many candidates, and the board out of that decided to bring up to 6. Since we don't know what the number of candidates, we don't, that was not outlined here, but it could be, it will be brought back to the board in terms of giving direction to the advisory committee in regards to the number of candidates once we know how many applicants we have. And then the board would interview the finalists from the advisory committee, and the board would make a final decision on who to appoint. This is a provisional appointment, because after the board makes that decision, the community still has 30 days in which to submit an objection to the appointment process and force the election. So to Board Member Rodriguez's point, there is that still possibility of the community stepping forward for that. Yes. And all of it is driven, Board Member Sanchez, by Ed Code's requirement that the filling of the position is within 60 days. And so, and also wanting to make sure that we don't go past June 30th. In this way, it starts July 1st. So the way that I looked at the timeline was using July 1st in backward map and use board meetings that we already had and that sort of structure to come up with the dates. Last time we had a few more days. And so I think it's only maybe 5 or 6 more days difference between the last time the board engaged in this and this time.
And just to note, it's not that much different than the previous appointments, even going back to a long time ago when I applied for an appointment. It's the same timeline.
How soon will this get posted on the website for the district?
So with the board approval, then this would be uploaded and made available on Friday. This Friday.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Otherwise, we'll move to a vote. Okay. So we'll move to a vote. So all those in favor of following the provisional appointment process as outlined on the board packet, please say aye.
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 And so that passes, and with 1 abstention. That passes.
Now, Carrie, you can comment and offer comments.
If you'd like. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Carrie. Okay, so we will now go to item 7.03, the approval of the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant for 2021. Dr. Martinez-Palmer.
Good evening. Oh, it's been a while since I've been at this podium, and it's so nice to see all of you. Good evening, and congratulations, Carrie, and thank you for your service in our district. So, I get to control this. This is fun. I'm going to take my mask off if that's okay. Thank you. So today's purpose for this presentation is to present to the board our proposed plan for the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. And we're going to learn how this funding, in combination with our other funds, are working to meet our overall arching district LCAP goals. And I just wanted to comment that I was inspired by the report from the DEEP committee, because I just see it all kind of aligning together. So I'm I'm really excited about getting more information on that. The recommendation for this grant was really based on what are we about as a district and what do we want to do as we recover from the pandemic and move into in-person instruction again. And so this is just to highlight our principles that we use to guide our decisions. These guiding principles are the same principles that we used with our COVID closure, all the committees that I ran this year. We always started with what are we about? What are we trying to achieve? And so we wanted to, first and foremost, is ensure that students and staff and community are safe. We want to make sure that we continue to hold equity and access and inclusion as the values that drive our decisions. We're always wanting to make sure that what's happening in the classroom is at the very best. And that we want to make sure that we're including all our stakeholders in our decisions and listening to each other in making those recommendations. Our new LCAP goals, if you remember, and I'll have the opportunity to come back to you in June to share with you on the LCAP, but we had 5 goals, and so we've narrowed it down to 3. And I personally wanted to have just some quick kind of elevator phrases to remember what those goals are, because as an organization, we should be able to ask anyone who works here and anyone in our community, what is Franklin McKinley trying to do? So first and foremost, we want achievement for every single student. We want to make sure that our classrooms and our schools are safe and that there's a good, positive work environment, and that we're constantly engaging our family and our community. So I'm going to have Jason, my colleague, share about the different buckets of money.
I'm going to have to go on that. So I think I need to, for those that have been following school finance for the last decade, one of the main terms that are used to talk about all the different sources of monies that schools receive, buckets. We have buckets of money. It's important to know that there are several buckets of money that we're utilizing to support our normal program and also enhance principles and guidelines and activities under ELO. So if you can go to the next slide. This is one of those buckets, LCFF, Local Control Funding Formula. Typically, we receive about $75.5 million under this funding source. This is the main funding source for our schools. The next one that is shown here is the local dollars, those that are raised within our district boundaries. So obviously parcel tax is one of those, leases and grants, and that totals to about $5.1 million. The next one is money that we receive from the federal government, typically Title I through 4, special ed dollars, that totals $4.8 million. Then we have state funds that we receive from California. I have a couple down here that probably look familiar to you, lottery and ACES grants. Another one that hits our revenue is CalSTRS. This is actually not cash that we receive, but under accounting guidelines, we need to record the revenue that the state is putting towards our teachers' retirement program and our revenue, and then there's a corresponding offset within our expenditures. In total, that's $10.2 million. These are our normal annual dollars that we're receiving as a district. Next one. These two buckets in green highlight some of the one-time dollars that we're receiving as a district. That obviously we're going to talk about ELO today, Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. That's $5.1 million. We also have a lot of the COVID money or CARES Act dollars that a lot of people refer to. So I've listed a couple of them here, and I'm sure you've read that already. That totals about $41.3 million. When you total up all of these different buckets, during this time, it's about $142 million that the district is receiving. Obviously, various restrictions are around some of these dollars and what we can do. But this gives you a level of context of what we're trying to do with our ELO dollars and how we're trying to support that with our normal annual. Slide. So what is the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant? Before you is a slide which explains what the ELO grant is. It is a grant that LEAs must implement a learning recovery program that at a minimum provides supplemental instruction, support for social and emotional well-being, and to the maximum extent permissible, meals and snacks to specified student groups who have faced adverse learning and social and emotional circumstances. And again, under this particular grant, we're going to receive $5 million, a little over $5 million. And we're actually looking forward to, and I can't wait to talk about some of the great things that the governor is proposing for next year that actually adds to this type of funding source. But right now, we'll talk about the ELs. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
So the requirements for this grant are that we need to ensure that we're serving one or more of the following groups that are listed here. And that we use a portion of these funds for either the hiring or the supporting of paraprofessionals in the organization. We also needed to make sure that we were talking with our stakeholders. It needs to be adopted before June 1st, 2021. That's why we are here this evening. And the funds are one-time dollars and they need to be spent by August 2022. So these were the requirements that we were given. So the first thing we did is we looked at data. So in order for us to determine what we wanted to do with the money, we always have to start with what is the data telling us. And so I'm just going to quickly kind of summarize the conversations that we've been having with both our district advisory committee, our DLAC, and with our principals. So one of the things that we noticed this year is that our attendance rates dropped. And so as of April, it was 96.5. Last year, it was 97.2. And the previous year in 2018-19, it was 95.9. So we went up from 18-19 to 19-20, but it dropped back down to 96.5. Just a hunch, we're in distance learning. The circumstances are different. We take attendance of our students. We look at how students are engaged. And so that may be some reasons why attendance also dropped. We also saw, as we disaggregated the data, that our Latino students and our students with disabilities had the lowest or had the lower attendance rates than the rest of the students. For chronic absenteeism, the 2019-20 data was not available, but just to share with you, board members, in 18-19, our chronic absenteeism rate was 8.7%. In the previous year was 8.4. So our chronic absenteeism did increase slightly before the pandemic. There isn't a metric that we could capture for 19-20. So that's just something that we want to continue to focus on, is making sure that our students are coming to school and that we're reducing that chronic absenteeism. When we looked at what students, how they're feeling about school and how they're feeling about their learning, we annually administer the Panorama LCAP survey of our students. And this is just a glimpse of those results. And this is the domains from the CASEL framework. So you can see that in self-management, our students scored, or the results was 65% of the students finding that was favorable. Growth mindset was 63, social awareness 61. And I was really concerned about self-efficacy and that's why I included the graph there on the bottom, because over the years, the students feeling the level of self-efficacy is actually declining. And so that's an area that our principals we've discussed, and in their SIPSs, they have actually highlighted areas that they're going to be working on. And many of them have chosen self-efficacy as an area that they really want to emphasize in the following year. We also looked at the Children's Healthy Kids Survey, which is another way to capture our students' needs. And this is data from this year, grades 3 to 8. I will say that not as many students took the Children's Healthy Kids Survey as in the Panorama LCAP survey. The LCAP survey is administered, with teachers supporting them online. But this one, I guess they had to, parents had to agree, right, to having their children take the survey. So we didn't get as many responses. But nevertheless, it's still a data point. And so sense of belonging or feeling connected to their school, only 70% of the students felt that they had a sense of belonging and connectedness to the school. And for our 7th and 8th grade students, it was even lower. And you can see that from 56 to 66%. School safety, perceiving that school is safe. You can see the percentages there, 71 and 62%. And then bullying, experiencing bullying was 12 and 22% at 7th and 8th grade. So overall, what does this say? This says that we still have some needs. Our students still need some attention around social emotional development. Academically, and I realize this may be hard to look at, but what we did in looking at academic performance, because there wasn't an SBAC test or a CASP test at the end of last year, we really had to rely on local assessment and to really kind of get a benchmark or a temperature check about how our kids are doing academically. So what we did is we compared the very last assessment that the students took at the end of last year, pre-pandemic, which was in March. And that was the trimester 2, we call it the Tri-2 benchmark. The students this year just finished their Tri-2 benchmark in in March of 2021. And so we just compared how students scored. And we have to be mindful, and I'm always reminded of this, that when students took the assessment and when they were in person, they were in person. But taking a test now during the pandemic remotely, you have to kind of think of that lens that students have different things going on at home. The engagement level might be differently. So we compare, but we really have to compare knowing that the conditions are very differently. So nevertheless, you can see that from the blue bars to the kind of orange bars there, you can see a decline of achievement in grade level in reading. However, you can look at our English learners and see that there's actually been an increase. So somehow our English language learners did a little bit better this year than pre-pandemic. And then if we look at math, we look at the chart on the right-hand side, that is what we call the Next Step Guided Reading Assessment. That's the assessment for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, 3rd grade. These are kids who are taking a test in learning how to read. So this is early literacy. And you can also see declines there. Our students with disabilities are flat, so there really wasn't any growth there, if you will. And then in math, with the green and the purple bars, you can also, just by looking at it visually, see that there's been drops for all of our groups. But our students with disabilities actually did better in math, and there was some increase. So what does this mean? This means, and I heard the community meeting today, parents are concerned, we're concerned. We know that our students did not have full access to a learning environment or a learning opportunity because of remote learning and distance learning, but we do know that the students did learn. We know that we should not perceive that as a lost year. We should really just perceive it as something that happened and something that we need to address when we get back in person. So the focus for us is really, as we look at our data and as we have conversations district-wide, is really focusing on our students with disabilities and our English language learners. So we asked students about how they were feeling, and I think Superintendent Cruz worked with the social workers, and here's just some examples of what students are saying about how they're feeling about coming back to school, what they're wanting to do when they get back, and what they're looking forward to. We also, in the LCAP survey, asked I analyzed what the students had to say, and there was an open-ended question about what are you looking forward to, or what help or support will you need when you come back. And I have to say the number one thing that students kept saying over and over that they wanted was math. They are very concerned and they're feeling very anxious around math. I mean, I don't know how many, I will need help in math. I must have counted like many, many, many responses with that same statement. I need help in math. I'm worried about math. The second highest response was around their teachers, that they want their teachers to be patient with them and that they want their teachers to help them. The third response was about their friends. They're feeling like they want to see their friends. They want to connect with their friends again. Reading and math were a concern, but math was more of a concern than reading. And so there was expressions of concern over literacy. And then the word work kept coming up. And here's a quote. I mostly want work support, like teachers supporting me with my work, even if I'm not good at it. For example, on math, if I'm behind a bit, my teacher would support me and help me through it. I think that's all I would like to ask. So these are just a glimpse of our students' voices about how they're feeling about coming back and what support they are requesting when they return. Again, a reminder, these are students grades 3 to 8 on the Panorama survey. So this slide is just a summary of the data that I'm sharing, and this is just a small slice. We really need to work on accelerating reading and math learning. We need to, at the same time, pay attention to the social emotional development of our kids. We want to intentionally work on English language learners and students with disabilities and making sure that they are feeling successful and that we're addressing their very specific needs. And at the same time, we know that our students are feeling nervous and anxious. And so we want to make sure that we're listening to them and that we're supporting them as well. So what did the parents and the stakeholders have to say? In my numerous meetings that I've had over this year, I think I've had more DLAC and DAC meetings than I've ever had, even pre-pandemic, because it was important for me to hear, to check in, to get advice, to get their input and their ideas. And so in summary, the parents of the English language learners, students, highlighted these 3 priorities. One was they're very concerned about mental health, and they kept saying to me, you know, quiero consejeros, you know, I want counselors, I want social workers, I need someone to help my child is depressed. Those were kind of just things that I kept hearing over and over. The second one was that they want their kids to be active. They don't want them to just do reading and writing and math. They want them to be moving, and they want them to be engaging with their friends when they come back. And they also express, I want my children to keep learning English. The District Advisory Committee, which is a more heterogeneous group of parents and staff, again, they also expressed social emotional support. They also, this is a quote from one of the members, experiences for our students, what that other students have in wealthier areas. They talked about engagement and joy in learning and addressing the academic skills. We did this in consultation with our bargaining units who were present at these meetings. We talked to principals. We actually had a meeting this Monday and asked them again on their input and feedback. And we listened to some of our students during the sessions and then through the surveys. So this is our recommendation that we bring to you for the use, for what to do with these $5 million on the ELO grant. And what this shows is on the left-hand side, this is what the California Department of Education said we can spend the money on. They said, here's a list of categories that you can use the funding for. We are recommending what's in the second column, and then on the ELO grant column, that's how we are suggesting that we use the funds. But we're fortunate to also have all kinds of other buckets of money that Jason has shared. And so even though we know that these monies are one time, we know that we have other funds that we can use to continue some of these strategies. So the first one is the student support specialist. This is going to be a teacher who will work as an interventionist and not necessarily always just academic. They may also be helping kids with social emotional development and integration in the work that they do, whether it's in reading, writing, or math. This is a position that we feel we can fund for 3 years using the ESSER funding. Every site would get a student support specialist. We are currently writing that job description, and we are hoping that in this position, the teacher we will want them to have flexible working hours so that they can work with students after school, because we know that some students and some parents want their students to get more. It's hard to do that beyond the teacher's workday. So this is a teacher with that kind of flexible work schedule. The second item, calling accelerating academic progress, we want to continue with the Lexia program. I have to say that during distance learning, we made a requirement that all students be on Lexia learning, working on their reading skills. And we have some good data that we're going to share, at a future date. But we want to continue with that. That's something that we started last year, and we don't want to just do it for a year or two. We want to continue with that, and we want to get better at it. So the funding will help us to sustain that program. Our library media aids, we were considering some cuts over a year ago when we were looking at our budget, but fortunately with the funding, we'll be able to secure an LMA at all the sites, and we'll be able, and those individuals are critical in helping to make sure that our students have materials, that the teachers have the materials that they need, that they're also serving students in small groups and making resources available. The parents kept saying, give me social workers. So fortunately with this grant, we will be able to fund the social workers at the sites. And you can see the cost there, supplemented by the ESSER funding for the next 2 years beyond next year. The parents kept saying, I want my child to be moving, doing music, doing other things other than just reading and writing. So using a combination of different funds, we want to make sure that we offer all of our students opportunities for theater arts, for music, for art, and also a PE recess program. So it's been promised that we would give every site $40,000 in allocation so they can run a program that will support students' physical and movement. We also wanted to allocate some funding for the HVAC improvement. Can I ask Jason to help me with that item, please? You can speak more about that than I can.
Yes, so our goal is to improve the air quality in all classrooms. We've already gone through the process of upgrading our HVAC units with MERV 13 filter. We're also looking at an opportunity to add in ionizers to the HVAC units, which will also help to improve air quality. So this is the cost to, one, purchase the units as well as get them installed to all of our classrooms. And right now, our contractors are working on doing that right now.
So the 10% is allowable by the state for this kind of expense in this grant, because we're required to have a portion of the grant for our paraeducators. We would like to extend the paraeducator time so that it matches the student's instructional time. So if a student is in school 4 hours or 3.5 hours, we want the paraeducator to be there when the students are there. We feel this is a good use of funding, especially after a year being in distance learning where students may need more support and more help. So we want to build their capacity and we want to offer this service to the students.
If I could add, Dr. Martinez, so not only match the instructional time, but we want to extend the paraeducators by 30 minutes beyond the instructional time to allow for the paraeducator and the teacher to collaborate, plan, debrief. And this is not something that right now our paraeducators have opportunities. And so with these funds, it will allow for that. And we believe that that'll create a greater amount of support for our students by just extending that by 30 minutes.
So the $50,000 here is to support the concentric student testing for COVID testing for our students. I don't know if Jason, if you want to add anything to that or no, okay, great. So this is our proposed plan. And so what I also wanted to do, and I'll be brief, is we're probably thinking this is what we're going to do with the funding. Well, what about ELD? What about, so we can't look at this fund as in isolation. We have to look at the bigger picture. And before I talk about that, Superintendent, would you like to share how our families are going to be informed? Because that is a requirement of the grant.
So part of the requirement is obviously to not just inform parents, but in terms of how do we engage and how do we make sure that we're monitoring, right, the effectiveness of the investment that we're making, because it is significant. And so part of the way that we look at this is once the board approves the ELO plan, we will make sure that we translate it in all three, that have it translated in Spanish and Vietnamese, so it's accessible by our community. It will be widely distributed through our platforms in regards to the plan that we're moving forward with. It will be shared with all the different committees that we have, both staff and parents. It will be a requirement that the schools share this information at their school cafecitos, school site council, and gather information and input and submit that to the district office. So we're going to be looking at every opportunity we have to be in front of any community member, any parent, any staff member, that we're constantly referring back to the ELO plan in regards to what is it that we're proposing and moving forward with. The other one is obviously parents that are whose children are receiving direct services. They will know what services they're being provided, and they will be kept abreast in regards to their progress in the services that they're receiving. In addition to that, as part of our accountability, what I recommend is that we have quarterly reports back to the board at the district level, but certainly the same level of data analysis and reporting that they'd be done at the school level with their school site councils. So it is our intent to be able to collect the data, document the progress, what services are being provided to which students, and be able to look at the comprehensive data for each student so that we can come back to the board and report on attendance, on academic, on the various data points that we can have to paint a picture of what this investment is impact it is having on our student and their progress. So that is our recommendation in regards to how, not only how we want to communicate with parents and stakeholders, but rather also how we hold us accountable to our community in regards to this investment.
Thank you. So how does the ELO and how do all the other funds work together to meet our district goals? And so I'm not going to go through each item. I just want to highlight some more of the critical actions. And this is also a preview to the presentation I'm going to bring forward in June for the approval of the LCAP. But goal number one, achievement for all, with equity at the core, increasing the level of success for our students while addressing learning gaps. So this is just a list of what I have preliminarily put into the LCAP, again, based on our data, based on our stakeholder input, based on what teachers and principals are telling us about needs. Some of the things that I want to highlight for this goal is we really are going to go into MTSS in a more more than we have in the past. We've committed some funding to work with a outside organization to help some schools get started on it and learn from that practice and then move on to the other sites. You can see the support specialists are there. On number two, the bulk of our LCFF dollars goes to staffing and making sure that we're being competitive salary-wise and that we are recruiting the best and the brightest to our district. You can see the paraeducators are there to support our early grades and our inclusion classrooms. So this is just kind of an overview of how all those funds fit together. And you can see that I've designated the funds on the different columns so that you can see where that money is coming from and the total amount being spent on that item. I would like to also let you know that I'm still working on this. So if you, in June when I come back, if you see a difference in the amounts, it's just because I'm still fine tuning the budget. So this is the second page to that goal, that first goal. I did want to highlight for the board that you have directed us to work on a technology plan. And so our goal for next year is to facilitate a process for a new technology plan. We've been thinking a lot about the return to school. What will students do with devices? How will teachers use technology? And I heard as part of the community meeting, the concern about screen time. However, there are skills that the kids learned and that the teachers have learned that we don't want to lose. So we're working with an outside organization, the Krause Center for Innovation, to help build capacity. We're just going to begin. We know that we can't do it in a year. So a lot of funding out of our federal dollars in Title IV will be going towards beginning this technology integration in our schools. For the second goal on positive school environment and school culture, as part of the MTSS framework, there is some intentionality about continuing to develop our teacher skills in integrating as social emotional learning strategies in when they're teaching academics. So it can't be like right now it's SEL time and now we're going to do reading. we really have to help our teachers learn how to integrate it, and that's not easy. So it's going to take time, but we've allocated some funding for that. And you can also see the second line there, the $1.6 million is on the social workers that the community has requested. Again, I'm going to review all this in a few weeks. Our third goal on family and community engagement, our district parent liaisons are critical. They've been critical this year in communicating with families. We also invested a lot of money in Language Line, making it accessible for any teacher or staff member to talk to a parent when they needed to connect with them and they didn't speak the language of the family. So this goal 3 is still being worked on. We know that we need to help our parents develop their leadership skills in our district. We have a lot of parent interest, but not a lot of parent leaders. And so we really need to work on building their skills and their confidence so that they can lead meetings and they can participate in many decision-making opportunities. So in closing, that is our recommendation for the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. And I just wanted to show you a glimpse of what's in the LCAP so you can see how it all works together. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, and if I could just add on the third goal, there are many other activities that are not listed here because they're not funded by us. So for example, the ESL classes for parents that we have had for now the past 4 or 5 years, though that is completely paid by Eastside. Eastside Adult Education provides the teacher. We simply buy the textbooks and provide the childcare when we've been in person. This year, obviously, that was not needed. The Family Resource Center, the 175, it is actually a lot of different parent supports are provided through the FRC centers, both at Santee, Dahl, and Lerone. And I'm happy to announce that come August, there will be a new Family Resource Center just across from this building in the portables. And we are expecting to do a ribbon cutting in August as the new FRC for the district. So it may feel like it's light, but that's because a lot of our partners, we leverage a lot of our partners and a lot of the support that we provide for our families in our community. Part of what we wanted to do is really, even though this is coming back to you later, was to show the board and the community that the way we approached this was not this isolated plan of ELO, but rather how it was integrated, the overall, goal of the district in terms of our LCAP and all our other funds. So it didn't feel like it was sort of this plan, even though the state made it its own template, its own timeline, that it really was aligned to the overall goals of the district in utilizing the funds and leveraging them over the next 3 years. We know that this recovery is going to be a long road. And so we wanted to make sure that we had the funds allocated over the course of the life of the grants and utilizing them all to extend that over the next 3 years.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez-Palmer and Superintendent Van as well. Board members, do you have questions? Board Member Rodriguez?
Just a quick question on the ELO plan requirements. I know that you identify the needs from the students, but under the list of recovery program for one or more of the following groups, which of the groups did we identify that we're focusing on?
So I mentioned English learners and students with disabilities, but I honestly have to say, and Mr. Cruz and I have been talking about this, this year we've tracked engagement because we had to as part of the requirement under distance learning. I'm mostly concerned about students that had limited or low engagement. And so I feel that regardless of whether you're a student with disability at EL, I think our disengaged students, for me, are the students that I would prioritize being at risk and who I would want to really look at the specialists identifying those students and working with them. We've been talking about at the beginning of next year, we will be giving assessments of the students. And so for us, we want to know what their classification or their status is as a learner, but I think it's more important to just base it on need, like who has the most need or who has unique needs that need to be addressed.
And I would just add that at least in our district, if we look at all these categories, 85% of our students fall into one or more of those categories. I think districts that don't have the kind of population that we have to be much more intentional and targeted, because those students, their percentages are so low that they have to be able to do that. For us, really, with the number of students that we have that are either low income EL, it's easy for us to be able to report back. And this is something that we'll do we'll bring the data to the board in regards to which students we're serving, their demographics and things like that, so that you feel comfortable that we are addressing the largest needs that we identify, but that we are also addressing the needs based on these categories that the state has outlined.
Okay, so then I just want to understand more clearly. So that you mentioned disengaged students, and I imagine that there's disengaged students in all of those categories, including students with disabilities, students at risk, and students below grade level. If students, this is a learning question for me. If students are disengaged and they're in those other categories, how do we know that the students are disengaged? What's the measurement? How do we measure that? How do we know they are?
We have a very, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so as part of the attendance, we had, if you remember early in the year, we brought sort of the engagement log, and every teacher every week has to rate the level of engagement for students. So they were highly engaged or less, or completely missing. And so we've been tracking that week over week over week. And so we have that data, but we also have referrals from staff at the schools that come up, and social workers and other staff have been trying to connect with families. In some cases, we were successful in connecting with families, and they've sort of re-engaged in some level. But we do know that we have a list of students that, they have been completely gone all year long, or most of the year. So we do have those lists of those students that obviously will be the highest priority for us to make sure that they are getting the support once we are in person.
Okay, so if they have chronic absenteeism, does that mean that the cause of that is being disengaged?
Yes, so so the teachers right now have to take attendance.
Right.
They also have to fill out the participation log or the engagement log. So they have to, Norma, she showed up, but she didn't do any assignments. So I'm going to give her a 2. So there's a rubric. And so every student, the teachers are completing that for every student for the week. And they have to put it into our Illuminate system. And that's how we're able to pull data. And then for the students that are not engaged or minimally engaged, the principals or the teachers have to follow up and call the families. And my feedback, when I just did another survey with the principals, is that one of the challenges this year is they can't get a hold of the families. So you
count that as disengagement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, what if their chronic absenteeism is due to another reason?
So that's why I think to your point, Member Rodriguez, there might be some students that are not chronically absent that are disengaged. You're right. There are some students that are chronically absent. And so there's been a process that we've had, where we try to engage with the family, what's the barrier? Can we resolve the barrier? Whether it was, their internet wasn't working. And so we exchanged the hotspots to try and get them engaged. When they come back, those students, we are going to have to go through a process of identifying, right? It may be that they were chronically absent because it was distant learning. But once they come back to campus and we can actually lay eyes on them and be able to start working with them, we have to develop a plan of supporting and eliminating barriers. Some of them may be barriers that we can provide services for. Some of them we may have to refer to somebody else, some of our community-based organizations, to address some of them. Some of them are, homelessness. Some of them are, food scarcity. So there's a lot of different things that they go into the barriers that are keeping students from coming to school. So you're right that we are going to have to figure out what it is and try to address it.
Okay, so then I was leading to this, my last question. I don't want to ask too many questions, but my last question is, once we come up with a plan and we approve it and it starts getting implemented, is it possible to revise it as needed?
Yes.
Okay. Because this needs to be submitted to this,
So the plan is attached on the board item.
Yeah.
And so the requirement is that it get approved by the board without respectfully requesting the approval. And then I submit it to the county.
Got it.
And then we have to post it on our website so that all of our community can see what's in the plan. But I don't believe, like any plan is a plan. We can always adjust, readjust based on what results we're getting.
Okay. And this is for federal and state funding?
This is
just the ALO is just state funding.
State funding.
But yes.
Okay.
Kind of
Yeah, because it's the yeah, got
it's
it.
one time.
Got it. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Any other questions or comments from board members?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Another thing, in terms of you look at charter schools and one of the things they have over us is that's something I know. That's something that we'll look at. Look at in terms of state for.
Yeah, that's why we want the student specialist to, we're actually requiring that they adjust their workday so that they will work with kids after school.
Yeah. So we're in negotiations with FMEA to have an MOU where their day would not mirror the classroom teachers, so as to extend the day for them. But in addition to that, the Little Heroes or the Recess program, they will be extending the day for students by offering co-ed, non-competitive sports programs for students to participate. We're also engaging with nonprofits that will offer dance and enrichment music after school as well, just in the way that we've in the past used San Jose Jazz. They will continue. They've said that they'll coming back. So our intent is to be able to extend the day for students and offer them these enrichment activities.
Yeah.
Well, we are getting more money because it is based on our free and reduced account, right? Our non-unduplicated account. So all districts are receiving these funds based on that formula that the state has.
Great. Did you have other questions?
Yeah, just a couple questions regarding the enrichment that's listed here. How inclusive is that going to be? Because I know we'll probably have to contract vendors to come in and provide that service, and oftentimes they're not necessarily trained to work with children with higher needs. So is that being looked into?
Yeah, that'll be part of the vetting process. I mean, first we're having conversations with these organizations or companies. So number one, do you have the capacity to work with all of our schools, or with how many, schools or students groups? And then, remember, we have students with special needs, we have second language learners, and, students are returning back to school and may have some other kinds of needs. So we want to make sure that whoever we contract with are prepared and able to work with our population.
And I'll just add that Dr. Galvarin actually pushed for us to find a community organization that actually specializes in moderate to severe students. And she has contracted now for a pilot with our ESY in the summer, so that from there we can learn what their capacity is and be able to continue that when school starts. But that was something that she really wanted to offer during ESY as a way to transition back into in-person.
And how about for emotional support? Is the district considering investing in restorative justice?
We are, and that is part of what the social workers in conjunction with the principals will be going through training this August, as a way to support that on the ground at the school level, in regards to how do we create a welcoming, safe environment, and how do we create a community. And so they will be trained on how to implement healing circles, and they will be practicing that with the adults when we first come back, and then obviously training them on how to actually do it in their classrooms.
And then I just have a couple questions. Thank you, Norma. So I know George had asked about the student support specialists. Do we have any idea about how many students would actually be able to, have access to that teacher?
So that's one of the things that we're designing, sort of what the model is, how many cycles, is it a 6-week to 8-week, how many maximum students could they have, 5, 8, so we're trying to figure out what that looks like so that we can then run it through sort of like how many students then can they actually support, and then build the monitoring and the data analysis for how we're going to determine impact. So we believe that we'll be able to provide direct services to students at least 4 days out of the week, where Thursday may be the day that the specialist works on, the data, the documentation, all those things, because it's a shortened day already. And so we'll have the number for the board as soon as we sort of finalize the model, the intervention model that we want to propose.
And is Coral incorporated in any of this in terms of any of the extended learning time?
So not in terms of the funding at this from the ELO. We are securing continue to secure additional funding to support the expansion of Coral. I was able to secure the $250,000 from Applied Materials to continue to expand our Coral program. And so we are looking at all the additional funds for us to be able to expand that and collaborate with, say, Little Heroes in our enrichment program. So as how do we make sure that we increase the number of seats that we have available after school?
So what would it take to be able to say that we can provide an extended learning opportunity to every student in our district? Is that something that's feasible with these funds?
It actually would be highly, that number is pretty high. And and the other thing is, would we be even be able to have the staffing for it as well? But just know that we are intending to increase significantly the opportunity for after school for across the district through the various partners. Because we understand
the intent is to get as close to that as we can, as many opportunities.
Not necessarily with Coral, but with our like Little Heroes. They offer some tutorial, and then they go out and do the organized sports. So they'll be able to increase our capacity for after school beyond Coral as well.
And then in terms of the time, I know several of these items have like funded for 3 years or funded for 2 years or funded for 1 year. So does that mean it will then come back to the board to say we are, that time is up, and so positions are going to be cut or programs are going to be cut at that point?
So it's yearly budgeted, right? So the commitment to the staff is that they're hired, and then if funds were to disappear or run out, then it's up to us to make a recommendation to the board in regards to what staff and what services can be reduced, and that would come to the board for approval. They are posted with the sort of the language that says these are categorical funds, from that language, so that employees know that this is not a stable source of revenue. But just because they're funded out of there doesn't mean that the board has to decide that once those funds are gone, that they're the first ones out. That's why it's important for us to build an accountability and a monitoring process, so that if indeed these investments are making an impact on students, that is data that the board, I'm sure, would like to have to make decisions about.
I think it's more just for transparency's sake.
Yes.
I think that needs to be clear that we are using one-time funds for a lot of these decisions, which is important, but also just so that the public and our community stakeholders also realize that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we added that language in the posting, so that there would be some transparency around that. Thank you for that.
Right.
We would either need to find another bucket, right, Jason? Or another option is another opportunity. Man, I love what you said, Mimona. Why couldn't we offer this to every student? But if we increased enrollment in our district, then that might just work. Right?
Absolutely. What would that mean, or what would that look like? How would you evaluate the effectiveness of that? Would be my question. Bring forward the specific idea, George, and we'll have to consider it.
I did the groundwork for that one myself.
So we can keep the meeting going. I would like to move that we approve the expanded ELO opportunity grant and plan.
Second. Right, the approval of the expanded learning opportunity grant has been moved and seconded for approval. No other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Martinez-Palmer. All right, we will now go to item 8, the consent items. And actually, I'm going to say items 8, 9, and 10. So board members, let me know if you have any of those items that you would like to pull. Item 8.03 is going to now become 11.05. Any other items? I would like to pull item 8.06. So that will become 11.06. Any other items? And I'll go ahead and read. Members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with board bylaw 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment on item 8, 9, or 10? Right, hearing none, I'll accept a motion on the consent items 8.
Move to approve consent items 8.01 8.01, 8.02, 8.04, and 5.
Second.
Great. Items 8.01, 8.02, 8.04, and 8.05 have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. We will now go to consent items over 25,000. And board members, I'll accept a motion when you're ready.
Move to approve consent items 9.01 and 9.04.
Second.
Items 9.01 through 9.04 have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Now go to item 10, construction items. Again, I'll accept a motion when we're ready.
Move to approve items 10.01 and 10.02.
Items 10.01 and 10.02 have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. We'll now go to 11 action items. Item 11.01, the personnel report. I believe Clerk Rosado will be reading that for us.
Yes. I move that the personnel report be approved as submitted, and that A, the employment for the following employee be approved. Karen Ambries for school social worker, August 4, 2021. The resignation for the following employee be approved. Elizabeth Cyprus, noon duty, September 4, 2020. The voluntary reduction in FTE be approved for the following employees. Trisha Nishikawa, SLP at Kennedy, 24 FTE, August 4, 2021. Alyssa Felder, SLP at Meadows McKinley, 20 FTE, August 4, 2021.
Thank you, Clerk Rosado. Motion.
Second.
The personnel report and addendum has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. We will now go to item 11.02, the May 11th, 2021 board meeting minutes. Board members, hopefully you've had a chance to review those, and I will accept a motion when you're ready.
Second.
The May 11th, 2021 board meeting minutes have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. We will now go to 11.03, the permanent status for certificated teachers 2021-2022 school year. Assistant Superintendent Rusty.
Hello. The certificated evaluation policy requires that the Board of Education approve the placement of qualified staff into permanent status each year. I bring before you the list of teachers attached to this item that we ask that you approve for granting permanent status beginning the first day of the school year for the 21-22 school year. You can read off their names as they are listing and tuned in tonight. For Bridges, Clodoaldo Barrera, Catherine Edgar, Lynn Awali, Joseph Guthrie, Arnold Henry, Ian Johnson, and Carly McGough. For Dahl, Catherine Cordero, Stacy Devine, and Crystal Prentice. For the district office, Cheyenne Jaiswal, Van Pham, and Noelle Stanley. From Franklin, Tanya Garcia. From Shirakawa, Rochelle Espitia and Nicole Scagliotti. From Los Angeles, Marina Morales and Julissa Valdez. From McKinley, Shelley Walker. From Meadows, Molly Morrisroe. From Santee, Ashwin Kumar. From Stonegate, Stephanie Ho, Angela Malley, Julie Sanchez, and Josephine Trin. From Sylvandale, Neil Stanley, and from Windmill Springs, Nancy Yu.
Thank you, Annette, and congratulations to those teachers. Board members, I'll accept a motion when you're ready.
Second.
The permanent status for certificated teachers for the 2021-2022 school year has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That motion passes unanimously. I should say congratulations now. The item has passed. Yes, that's very exciting. All right, let's go to item 11.04, reporting on the delegating authority to take the necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus.
So I have not taken any action as this delegation from the board. I just want to report that, board president and I, visited 2 schools, and it just, again, it was wonderful to see the opportunity for students to be in person and our staff. We are moving forward with inviting over 1,000 students for summer school. So that'll be our next phase of sort of how do we support students and staff in person as we start to look at reopening, fully reopening in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. We will now go to item 11.05, which was previously item 8.03, the 2021 acceptance of City of San Jose grant for DAL. Board Member Sanchez, did you have a question?
Yeah. So the regular process is for schools to notify the district that they are intending to apply for a grant. They cannot apply or accept anything unless cabinet members have signed off on it. Once that the proposal and the grant is authorized, then it is up to them to let us know so that we can sign off on whatever agreement whoever's providing the donation or the grant. We bring that to the board not for approval as much as it is for recognition, public recognition of the grant. Cabinet members have the authority to sign and accept the grant and move the process forward. One of the things that we recognize through this process is that we need to refresh the process with our school sites in regards to them notifying the district cabinet members of grants so that we are able to ensure that the processes move forward and recognizing the donation by the board in this fashion.
And I guess once the school just has to move forward, and they really should move quickly.
Correct. They need to actually let us know prior to submitting the grant, and that is so that we, as a district, are ensuring that we are asking entities and that the purpose of the grant and all that is in alignment and in compliance with our rules and regulations. So that is one of the reasons why they need to let us know as they're applying, so that we're not getting funds from entities that we would not support, or for things that would be contrary to our mission and our purpose.
So I'll accept a motion on that item. Right, item 11.05, the acceptance of the City of San Jose grant for DAL has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. We will now go to item 11.06, which was formerly item 8.06, the FMSD expulsion plan. My question on this item, and board members, let me know if you have additional questions. In terms of the plan that's outlined here, I know that some of this is, I guess, more of a formality in terms of what's submitted to the county every year. But the specifics in this that have to do with the universal behavior response, as well as restorative practices, what is the district's process with making sure that that information is communicated across our stakeholders?
Thank you for that. As I mentioned before, the plan on restorative practices and the universal behavior support matrix is something that we are going to be rolling out in August. This is in so the behavior matrix in itself is simply a document, but rather how do we actually implement is the important piece. And so one of the things that we are doing is providing training for our principals. The training that our social workers are going to undergo is in-depth trainer of trainers. And so part of the rollout for next year in having our staff come back in person and supporting our students is a combination of the restorative practices, trauma-informed. A lot of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of months, and a lot of our staff have been engaged in that training, is around sort of how do we approach behavior and our response to behavior, knowing that behavior is a way that the students are communicating. And then there's things that we have to respond to based on Ed Code. And there are things that Ed Code says that we have to do other means of correction. And so our plan is to be able to outline all of that and start working with our staff in August and provide ongoing training and support throughout the year. And that's one of the reasons why, we're very excited about the fact that we will have boots on the ground with our social workers who are going to be sort of along with the principals, the sort of support day in, day out at our schools in terms of how to respond to behavior in accordance with Ed Code and in accordance with the behavior matrix that the SEL committee has sort of taken a look at from a social emotional lens and a trauma lens, that it actually does speak to that.
So I guess I'm just trying to get more clarity around when we're talking about expulsions specifically and which expulsions qualify from specific Ed Code language, or the expulsions that are sometimes a gray area or more subjective. How are those, based on this plan, how are those being determined? So this particular plan is basically to make sure that the district has board policies and practices in regards to how to support students that are either being expelled or recommended for expulsion or coming back. So the question really is then, what is the system that is in place to be able to evaluate students and which students get recommended for expulsion and which students don't? Is that what I'm hearing you say, Board President, the question? Right, because some are more black and white, right? This offense in Ed Code says that you are then recommended for expulsion versus others are not. So how are we making that differentiation?
Thank you for that. So yes, the mandatory ones, right? I mean, they're clear. There's no discretion from the administration in order not to bring those forward. What they call the quasi discretionary ones, we go through a process individually to determine whether, in working with the principals, and whether the principals are recommending for expulsion, because the recommendation starts with the school site and the principal. And so they gather all the information, they provide students due process, and then we engage with our attorneys to say, does this meet, based on this evidence that we have, that based on the offense, does this meet the guidelines under Ed Code in terms of recommending for expulsion or not? If it does, then we bring it to the committee that hears the case, and then they get to determine whether to make the recommendation to the board for expulsion.
I guess my concern with that is, and it's not that I don't place the trust in the principals, obviously they know the students well, but in terms of a systemic approach and making sure that we're being as objective as possible and equitable as possible, how do we ensure that it's not just the principal and ultimately legal counsel making that determination?
I mean, there could be an opportunity if the board wanted to direct the administration to create
is this
another.
What other districts do? It's just based on principal recommendation and legal counsel.
It is, and board member Sanchez can speak to that since he was the one that dealt with that at a district level and at the site level. A lot of it is providing the student with due process. I mean, our board policy and Ed Code is about providing students with due process. And through that due process, we gather evidence, we determine the conditions and
that's after, right? That's after they've been recommended for expulsion. It's not necessarily
that's immediately after the offense that triggers a due process. The student gets suspended. We have to go through due process. We notify the parent of the offense and whether we are going to consider, based on the offense, a recommendation for expulsion. The principal has to do the investigation, gather all the evidence, and whether then it meets the letter of the law in terms of any of those Ed Code violations.
Okay.
And then part of the due process is if there are special, as you know, if there are students with special needs, then it takes a different direction prior to making the recommendation. And so it all starts with, at the school site, when we know there's been a violation that meets potentially one of those Ed Code violations, and that starts an investigation and a gathering of evidence and information to substantiate whether it meets the Ed Code violation under any of those expellable offenses. And that's done in coordination with the principal and any party that is involved, the parent, anybody that was involved in that situation.
So perhaps that is something we can look at in the future, and just in terms of whether there are ways to look at this from a systemic approach and see if there's opportunities to make it more equity based or rooted in equity.
I think to your point, Board President, I think it might be beneficial for us to sort of have some time where we only just look at the whole behavior approach and response, and specifically around what are the kinds of things that are under Ed Code that give us some latitude, and why would we even have that? I'd be more than happy to bring something very specific around that, because I think that's important for all of us to have an understanding of what is actually at our discretion and what is not. And if it is our discretion, what lens or what criteria would we use? Because I think what I'm hearing you say is that we want to make sure that it is being applied consistently and fairly across.
Or then if there needs to be potential changes to board policy to ensure that we're approaching this more.
Yes, I agree with you.
Member Rodriguez?
Yeah, but okay, so I can't remember how long ago it was. I think it was about 5 years ago. Did the Ed Code change? Because we used to have 1 or 2 explosions a semester, and then all of a sudden we haven't had any in the last 4 years. So was there a change in Ed Code, or what was the reason that we went from having some expulsions? And we can talk about the equity part later, but I'm just wondering what occurred that we're not having any. Well, I know last year we didn't, but before that we hadn't had any expulsions at all.
So the approach in terms of the state requiring districts to implement other means of correction has been a change. So there is a shift from punitive exclusionary practices that existed before this, and this is not just with schools, but rather the whole criminal system, has been a shift from those practices that exclude students, and as one of the speakers said earlier, that starts to push students or send them in a different direction. That has been a shift in a change. In fact, if you remember, we brought to the board a resolution in regards to just a lot of those parameters. The state has actually prevented us from suspending students for K, which was the catch-all of students that are disruptive. And so now we can't even suspend K to 3. This board said K through 8, that just on K, we were not going to suspend them out of school. And so there has been a shift. That doesn't mean that we can't expel or suspend students that are dangerous, that have severe behavior incidents, and we have done that. We brought to the board a situation where it was very serious, and we went through the whole expulsion process, and they ended up being expelled because it was very egregious and dangerous what they had done. So yes, to your point, there has been a shift not only in the ed code and in the laws, but the philosophy around how to support students that are experiencing behavior challenges.
So why, in the last couple of years, though, I've felt that there's been a greater concern by many of our teachers that they don't feel safe in the classroom. Is this due to those behavior problems that students are not being expelled for now?
I would say that's some of it. I think part of that is also, as a system, there hasn't been a shift in our perspective about what we can exclude students and what we can't. I mean, some staff, years ago, I mean, if a student just didn't sit down at their desk, they were out and they were being suspended. And so we know that that's not the practice. It's not helpful to the student, and it's actually not allowed. And so it is trying to make sure that we have, we're approaching this in a very different way. And so, yes, do we have some students that we have struggled with? Yes. And I will just say that some of them, we haven't done our due diligence about due process. So that kind of handcuffs us in terms of the actions that we can take legally, which is one of the reasons why we also have implemented independent study, because for some students that is an appropriate placement and they do well. And so it's about finding the right approach to support the student. This is not about excluding them. This is not about kicking them out of our district or our schools, but rather how do we support them, because that is what our charge is. But I agree that we have to be responsive to when there are some serious behaviors that we have to respond.
So with the decrease in expulsions, have we had an increase in suspensions? Do we track those?
We track suspensions, and actually we're tracking suspensions at a greater rate now. I think I've reported to the board before that 6 years ago, there was little to no documentation of behaviors and these kinds of things. I can report now that we are better tracking. There's still some that we catch is like, that's not documented. There's no accountability to what students were which students were being suspended, which were being kicked out of class, which students were just sitting in the office. That's a in-school suspension, but it wasn't being tracked. So we're doing a lot more so that the data really reflects what's going on in the schools. Yes. Yes. So I just want the board to know that it's not the behaviors. We just have to do our best to support the students in the best way we can so that they can stay in school, they can stay in class. But when that is a danger, we have to take action. We have to exclude them. But then what do we do after we exclude them? And that's the biggest thing, because we only can suspend a student for 5 consecutive days and no more than 20 days in a school year. That's the law. And so we have to, within those limitations, we have to work and support our students, right? Because they are our responsibility, every single one of them, even if they're not behaving well.
And I said it earlier, but I want to say it again, that I'm still, I don't know if I'm real concerned or just a little or what concerned about the behavioral issues of our students when they come back to in-person model again. Yes. When we come back to traditional, what is there are we going to have an increase in suspensions, or what's going to be? It's kind of scary.
Yeah. So part of the what we're trying to do is, right, well, how are we being proactive, right? And part of that is, what are the supports? What are the things that we can engage students, right? Because we know that if they're engaged and they feel connected to adults and they're doing well, those behaviors tend to be lower, right? And so the more that we can be proactive, the more that we can provide services where the social worker could do pull-outs, can do immediate interventions, crisis, they can support our teachers on how to support them in class, then we're going to be better off. But yes, remember, Rodriguez, we are concerned about.
And what kind of training are we giving our teachers to prepare? I'm really concerned about our teachers in this case, because I want to make sure our teachers are trained well enough to deal with those at a frontline position, and then refer to whatever support they need, that student, because it concerns me that, and this has never happened before, so we don't know what's going to be happening, but it's just a little concerning that we might not be prepared for in-person model, and we might be reopening in the fall, and then what?
So we have been providing a lot of training the last couple of months around how to identify trauma, what are the kinds of things that we need to sort of, as educators, be able to look at. And this has been offered to all our staff, administrators, classified and certificated. And we just are finishing up the four series of that. And we've had about 50 staff members. So we're continuing to provide those opportunities for, we offered, mindful schools for staff, and they've been, eagerly accessing those. So it's going to be an ongoing process, and we know that we have to support our staff so that they can support our students, and we have to be prepared for the unknown, really, because none of us know what this is going to look like come August. But at the same time, we have to support our staff, right, for their own also mental health and their own social emotional as adults, because it's not just the students that have gone through this; it's everybody. Everybody. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
And to clarify this plan, it's not really detailed.
And so it's not
this is just a plan to submit to the county for a process, and we can work on the equity issues and other issues that might arise in the future. But I am total agreement with you, Maymona, on that we really need to look at those things.
Well, and that's why, I just want to be clear. I'm in no way advocating that we expel more students, but at the same time, I do think every child has the right to a safe environment. Absolutely. Every teacher and staff member also has the right to a safe learning, workplace. Yes. And so how do we make sure both of those pieces go together? So we're not pushing out students, but we don't have individuals in our school system who are getting hurt. Mm-hmm. We have to be able to be responsive and proactive to that. So that's where I think the broader system, we need to look at what is the plan in those gray areas of ed code.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. We'll agendize a deeper discussion with more information that we can provide to the board. And actually, one of the ways that I approach this is, legal counsel is always our partner in this, because so much of this is embedded in ed code and law and case law, and specifically when we're talking about special education. And so we can even have our legal counsel that we work with on a regular basis, so that it's just not my perspective, although there is a mindset that we all kind of come to this, right? But that there is also the legal part of it that we need to make sure that we understand. Because sometimes that is what can get in the way.
Thank you. Hearing no other question or discussion on this item.
Move to approve the FMSD expulsion plan.
So item 11.06, which was previously 8.06, has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. We will now go to item 12, communications from the superintendent.
Yeah, again, just excited. I was able to go to Kennedy actually twice this past week. I had the opportunity to go and celebrate staff appreciation with our staff. I think it was Thursday, and then Friday, board president and I went, and it's sort of my first time going out to the schools where students and staff are there, and so it was great to do that. Other than the 19th when we welcome them back, so it's just trying to get back into that idea that we do have staff and students on our campuses, and kids are coming out and playing in the blacktop, and it's just sort of a novelty now, and it's weird, but it's exciting to be able to do that. We are moving forward with, like I said, with our summer program, and I will let the board know when those dates are. And I'd invite all of you to come and join us for that as well. Again, I just want to announce that we are going to open a family resource center just across the way from this building. That's exciting. Jason and Gabriel and the team have been diligently trying to get the facility ready. It was in pretty bad shape. We don't venture that way too often, and once we started looking at it, it was like, wow, this needs a lot of work. So his team and Gabriel have been great at working on getting that facility ready for the Catholic charity staff that are going to be providing family engagement, and we will make sure that all of the board is invited to the grand opening in August, and we're going to be doing it in person. Nowadays, it's like we have to sort of qualify that. Is it going to be in person or virtual? And maybe one day we won't have to do that. But that's an exciting news for us here and for the Rock Springs community, because certainly we know that not only before the pandemic, but certainly, as we've mentioned, after all this, there's going to be even a greater need for support for families. And so happy to see that coming. Also, I want to announce that I had forgotten about the fact that we submitted a grant in conjunction with the County Office of Education about over a year ago. And this past week, we were notified that we were recipients of 2 of 6 wellness centers through this grant. And those wellness centers will be fully staffed with this grant. And so we will be able to leverage that in our social worker and our staff. And those 2 wellness centers will be at Santee and at Loron. So out of 6 in the entire county, we have 2. So, looking forward to that support as well at those 2 school sites. That is all.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz, for that very exciting news and updates. We will now go to item 13, communication from the Board of Education, 13.01, board member reports, and we'll start with Clerk Rosado.
I just want to wish everyone a good long weekend, and I know Memorial Day is coming soon, so yeah, no other report.
Thank you. Board Member Rodriguez?
Yeah, I just want to thank Board Member Carrie Rosado for your service to the Franklin McKinley School District. And I actually have known you a long time, even prior to that. And every role that you have played, you've always cared about the community. So I hope that we find someone to fill your shoes here, because I really applaud you for your heart for the community, even prior to the Franklin McKinley School Board, through the other organizations you've been involved with. And it's commendable, and I appreciate it. I know that your new location where you're moving to, you'll probably look into something getting involved in that area as well. So, and it all goes down to you care about children, and I see it in your own children. And I want to let you know that we will miss you greatly, and wish you well as you move on to your next chapter in life. That's it.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Board Member Sanchez?
Now we have two, though.
Thank you, George. For my report, I really wanted to echo those comments, Carrie, and also just say, I think I've learned so much from you as you know, an advocate, as a mother, as a, you know, just involved in the community with special education and amplifying and always refocusing and making sure that we don't forget those students and those members of our community. So I really just want to thank you for really giving that gift to me, because I hope to be able to carry on that torch of the legacy you've left here as well, with continuing to amplify the call for special education. So thank you. And as Superintendent Cruz shared, I was able to visit some classrooms at Santee and Kennedy, and it was just so heartwarming and so I just so enjoyed and loved being back in our schools and in the campuses, and seeing the in-person cohorts and the teachers just doing such a great job, and the students so excited to be back in our choral classrooms, and just seeing how all of these components, you know, are coming together. It just makes me so hopeful for the summer and also for the fall, because one of the little girls had showed me her rock that she made for the community garden, and it was supposed to capture, you know, what it was like during the pandemic, and she had all kinds of designs on there, and I thought it was like this beautiful controlled chaos on this rock that was captured of what this past year has been like for her. I just thought that stood out. And then attended the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging Committee, and just I want to thank those committee members again. It's a very hardworking committee, and I can see the path that we're setting forth for ourselves for this district, and that's really exciting. With that, we'll go to item 13.02, agenda item requests. Are there any requests at this time?
Yes, I would like us to get like I mentioned earlier, is to get a report on our suspension activity versus expulsion as long as we've been recording those over through the years, so that we can get some clarity on, you know, what's going on in those areas, and maybe take action from that if we need to.
And I'll second that motion.
It's not a motion, but
I know. All right. Any other items?
Can we get more clarity as far as additional training that's going to be provided to the staff in preparation for the upcoming fall?
Yeah, we're more than glad to bring that. We are actually putting that together and finalizing, because I promised the staff that we would give them as much information before they left for the summer in regards to what training will be offered right at the beginning and throughout the year as a way to support them. So I'm more than happy to provide that also to the board.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. All right, we'll go to item 14, future business. We don't have any at this time. We'll go to item 15, future meeting dates. 15.01, there will be a special board meeting that will take place remotely for the SIPSAs, the board study session on May 27th at 7 p.m. Then we have 15.02, June 8th, that's a regular board meeting. Also at 7 p.m., the public may participate virtually. 15.03, the June 22nd board meeting at 7 p.m. Item 16, closed session. We are not returning to closed session at this time, so I will go to item 17, adjournment, and accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made to adjourn and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that motion passes unanimously. We are now